Next speaker, Michał. Michał have spoken on multiple meetups in different cities. He speaks on the webinars, wrote multiple articles, but now he's first time on the bigger scene. So good luck, Michał, and make a big shout for him.
Hello. This one is better. Okay, so Mariusz introduced me, so let's skip this part. And I think I want to start my presentation to assess your capability of gathering knowledge out of my presentation. So maybe let me ask you a few questions before. So how many people have worked today? Please raise your hands. Okay, about half. And how many people went to this conference from different city or different country? Okay, quite a lot. And how many people are going to after party? Nice. So I think I see some correlation between not working and going to after party. That's good. All right, so my presentation is a little academic, but I will try to make it as easy to capture as possible for you. Let me start with the question. Have you ever had a feeling when you started designing some solution, designing architecture for some feature, that someone already done something similar? Or maybe, that was a rhetorical question, but thank you. Or maybe you had this feeling like internally that you already solved similar problem in another application. Maybe some requirements were different, obviously, but the problem was basically the same. So if you had this feeling, my presentation tries to address it. And I will try to show you some solutions that people had to those problems. And here is the bad news. My presentation is based on a very complex and sophisticated book written about 20 years ago. And I really recommend reading this book if you want to be a software architect or if you have problems with sleep. But I really studied this book for last half a year, and this presentation will try to summarize it for you so you don't have to read it. So let's start with some definitions. There is a word archetype in the title of my presentation, and throughout this presentation it will be thrown like 1,000 times. What is an archetype? This guy here is Carl Gustav Jung, and he's an author of a definition for this word, archetype. Of course, this word was used long before him, but let's stick to the definition that he crafted. It says that there exist some universal concepts across human cultures, across human groups. And let's take a look at the example. One of those universal concepts is an idea of being a hero. Doesn't matter if you ask people in ancient Greece or in medieval France, or you can ask even a hunter from Apache tribe, they all know what it means to be a hero. There is some set of common traits that you have to be a hero. You need to be brave, skilled, you need to do some challenges or something. And there is this idea that someone is a hero and some other people are not. Why it's important for us? Because we usually work for businesses. We are doing software systems that work for businesses. And there exist archetypes in businesses. And you already know them. This is an idea of a customer or a company or inventory or a product that your company is selling. But what is useful for us, those archetypes can be grouped together. And they can be described as a patterns. And here in the context of the book that I've written and in the context of my presentation, when we are talking about archetype, we mean a specified requirements and then a way how to meet those requirements. If you change those requirements, it might turn out that the pattern won't be applicable, or only parts of the patterns will be applicable. How do you get knowledge about archetypes? So obviously, besides my presentation, you can read some more books, articles, but also you can talk to experts. If you talk to accountant who is working in the business for 20 years, he or she already knows lots of archetypes that are there. And even if you are working on software systems that are solving some problems, you can get knowledge out of those systems about archetypes. And now this guy. Don't even ask me what I needed to prompt to DALL-E to get this result. But there is a term, pleomorphism. And it basically means, it comes from biology, and it means adapting to an environment by a living creature to survive. So in the context of software engineering, it is adapting of an archetype or of a theory that comes from archetype to your specific use case. And we will use this term because it means you have an archetype and you need to adjust it to meet your specific requirements. And very basic recipe, well, how do you use those archetypes? Obviously, when you have a knowledge about archetypes and when you have a knowledge about what you need to do, then you need to select this pleomorph. So again, you need to select elements of an archetype that will fit your problem and meet your requirements. Then you need to still adjust it. You will see it later on in my presentation. Those archetypes are usually UML diagrams. So you need to put them to your code. Very boring stuff. But you can do that by translation or mapping, which means you take these UML diagrams and you transform them into your Ruby classes, models, modules, etc. But at the end, you still see that there is no universal solution for every problem, and most probably your business and your problems are somehow unique. Therefore, you need to extend the archetype by elements that you are missing. Right. So equipped with this theoretical knowledge, we can go to examples. And here is the thing. The party is not meaning what you think. Usually when we talk about party, we mean birthday party or after party, right? Having fun. So this is not the sense I want you to use this term during my presentation. We will use it in a completely different context. The context you can know from the Baldur's Gate, like you must gather your party before venturing forth, right? And the party means group of people or side of a relationship. And that's exactly the definition. We can also think about it as someone or something your business is working with or cooperating. And I told you there are UML diagrams in the archetype description. So the bad news is I have few UML diagrams in my presentation. But the good news is that we will go really quickly through them. They are only to demonstrate you how they look like. If you want to study them, you can find them in internet or in the book. But what is important from this UML diagram is the fact that the party is usually implemented as person or organization. So a human being or some company, some structure. And those are those two base elements of party archetype, but there are more. Usually when you have parties in your system, and I can ask you who don't have a user class or user model in your Ruby on Rails application, right? You can raise your hands if you don't have. So everyone has user class, right? Or you didn't listen to me. So the very first challenge is that how to identify parties, how to make sure that they are unique. You need to have some sort of identifiers. In Rails, we usually have that sorted out by IDs in your database, and that's completely fine. But you can also have registered identifiers, which are identifiers from third-party applications. We could use passport number or social security number for people, or VAT registration number for companies, right? But there are some limitations to them, which we need to take into consideration. There are more elements. I will go quite quickly through them. So there is also party signature, which is how to identify that the exact party have done something in the system. We have also some attributes of parties, like name, address, preferences. In the book, you can see that if you really need to capture the name in more details, you can use 10 different attributes of it. And there is also party manager, which is responsible for handling parties, finding parties in your system, taking care of signatures, etc. But as you saw, party itself is rather simple and straightforward. We usually have this user class, user model in our application, and it works. Well, what is much more challenging is the fact that parties can be connected together in many different ways, and the next archetype addresses this fact. And this is probably the most important slide from the party relationship archetype. So let me start with this. Imagine that we have a relationship between two parties. One party is a father, another is a son. We can describe this relationship at different levels of abstraction. We can say that this is a father and son relationship, quite detailed description. But we can also say that this is a parent-child relationship, or we can even say that this is just a family relationship. The latter example is quite abstract and also symmetrical, because we are not specifying who is who in this relationship. On the other hand, father and son explicitly tells us who plays what role in this relationship. And this is this important fact. When you are implementing party relationship in your system, you need to decide at what level of abstraction you want to capture this relationship. You can be detailed or you can be general, but you need to make this decision. If you don't know this archetype, well, you're just making this decision randomly. And usually what the book tells is that if you are capturing symmetrical relationships, usually it's less beneficial in your business, because those asymmetry is capturing more information, and this information might be crucial for your business. And also, using this archetype makes sense for asymmetrical relationship. Symmetrical relationships are just too easy. And as in the example, this is another example. When we have siblings and we have one brother and one sister, they have different roles. One party plays the role of being a brother and another party plays a role of being a sister. So those are base elements, and there is much more. Another UML diagram, but the most important thing about it is this connection between party relationship and party role. We need to specify that one party is somehow different than another party, and we are doing that by naming. One party is a supplier, another one is a client. This is quite arbitrary naming, and as you probably guess, in some relationships, this distinction supplier and client makes sense. Maybe in another relationship, it doesn't make sense, and you could use another naming. That's okay. We just want to underline the fact that those two roles are different. And there is much more, because when you have party relationship and roles, well, you can store more information about that. You don't have to do that in those two base models. You can extract that to separate models, role type and relationship type, which you can see on UML diagram, but really quickly. Another thing, when you have roles and relationships, soon you will realize that your system needs to address some questions, like if one party can play a specific role in given relationship, or if two parties can be connected together. To address that, we have another models, constraints, role constraint and relationship constraint. And we have also other things, like if you are playing some role, maybe there are some responsibilities connected to it, or maybe you are allowed to do that, to do something because you are playing some role. So there are also responsibilities and capabilities. And at the end, if you see that your whole model of relationships and roles grows, you can introduce party summary. Most probably other parts of the system wants to capture just the essence of the information about specific party. For that, you can have a separate model. All right. So here is a recipe if you were ever going to use this archetype. It's quite intuitive, to be honest. So we start by defining parties. Then we model the relationships between them. Then it's a good idea to check if the relationships that you proposed are actually meeting the requirements of the business. This is the moment when you need to think if those relationships should be symmetrical or asymmetrical. And then when you have that, well, obviously you select the roles for each party in each relationship, and you can add more elements if you need, constraints, types, responsibilities, etc. But if you were not going to use this archetype, that's also fine. What is really beneficial from archetypes is the fact that they ask some questions, or they point to some challenges that you will need to address if you have parties in the system. So you still can solve those challenges, not by implementing archetype patterns, but on your own, in your own way. But still those questions are worth to answer yourself. So, very basic one, what are the relationships between parties that you need to capture? What is this level of abstraction? How symmetrical they should be, or maybe they shouldn't be. And also, how you are going to handle the rules for relationships. What parts of your system will decide if two parties can be connected together. And also at this point, probably you think, where is any code or Ruby or Rails? So I have a repository with example of party relationship archetype and the next archetype. If you want, you can check it out, because probably we don't have much time today. I can just show you that when you take UML diagrams from this archetype pattern, you can simply translate it by creating the same models in your Ruby on Rails application. But yeah, you can see that, well, you can do that. But I have some conclusions after trying to do that. As I told you, I really studied this book and I tried different approaches. And about party and relationship, I have some conclusions in the context of implementing them in Rails. So the very first one is the fact we are usually capturing only the existence of a relationship, not the characteristics of a relationship. When you have a join table that works for has many through relationship, you are capturing just the fact that two entities are somehow connected together, but you are not capturing the characteristic of this connection. And maybe that's fine, you don't need to do that. Also, when we think about relationships, usually we tend to think about them in the context of active record. We have really convenient API that models really beautifully the relationships between models. Has many, belongs to, and other methods, and we intuitively think about relationships in the context of active record. So implementing the approach proposed by this archetype might be unintuitive. Also, if you go with this archetype, there might be some issues with searching, because the archetype says that one party, one party is not directly connected to another party, but it has role. The role is connected within a relationship, and then there is another role, and at the end is another party. So traversing through all those connections is quite expensive compared to one join table that you can have with ordinary Rails solution. But on the other hand, this archetype is really useful if you have lots of rules how to connect relationships together. If you see that you have them, or if you see that you need to add more columns to your join tables, maybe it means that extracting those into separate models, such as role, makes sense in your case. So that was example of party and relationship archetype. Now we have another one, and just few more. No, that's the last one. So most probably your business is selling something, or the system that works for your business needs to take care of it. So there is a product archetype, the idea that, well, goods or services that your business is selling. And again, probably most important thing about this archetype, we need to realize that there are different types of things we can sell. Usually we optimize our systems only for one type, but maybe this is wrong. Maybe we should optimize for all of them if we know that our business will grow. So what are those categories? Identical products. Well, mass-produced products like this bottle of water, right? We have also unique products. Artisan-made products are usually unique, so a painting by one artisan can be unique. And we have also something in between. Imagine an artist that creates 20 copies of a painting, and each one is slightly different. This is identifiable product and probably the most complex case. So you need to decide what types of products you will support in your system. Again, this needs to be your decision, not just a random idea that you will have a products table and it will work, right? And the archetype proposes that you should split those things. You should have a product type model or table and product instance model. Also, those are two different perspectives on looking at what you are selling. Product instance is the exact thing that you are giving to your customer, while product type is something your customer sees in the catalog. And I have UML diagram for that, of course. And usually product instances are identified by serial numbers, and product types are identified by product identifiers. And there is much more. If your business is selling something, you will soon realize that maybe those products can be grouped into batches. Maybe they are manufactured together and you need to capture this information. There is also a product specification. When you need to capture more characteristics of a product, you should have it in a separate model. And it's quite obvious, but we tend to store it most probably in the product type, right? So an archetype proposes that you should have a separate place in your app to capture the attributes of the products that you are selling. And there is the whole story about catalogs and searching for products. And most probably the most enlightening information out of this archetype is the fact that what your user is searching for, what your clients are searching for in the catalog, might not be directly connected to what you have in your warehouse. Maybe they should see some different information. Also, catalog entries might not be one-to-one connected to your product types. For example, if you have a catalog entry for medicines and you have aspirin 500 milligrams, that's okay for catalog entry, but maybe your product type is the exact kind of aspirin, but manufactured by specified manufacturer. And obviously, when you have a catalog, you need to enable searching, and searching in a way that you know your customers will try to search for those products. And the archetype addresses also another topics such as packaging. So usually when you have products, maybe they can be combined into packages. And if you have that case, the archetype addresses those problems because there are many challenges. There is a question how you will resolve the price around products if they are combined into package. What are the types of packages, etc., etc. And also, if you have many products and many different types of products, you might see that some products are somehow related to other products. Maybe some products are not compatible together, or one product is replaced by another product. And also there is a price. So this is also quite important. Archetype tells explicitly that you should have a separate place in your application that is responsible for pricing. You shouldn't store it in the product type or instance or even in product specification, because price can change. And the sooner you realize that, the better for you. You will be prepared for Black Monday or another days that can change pricing. And again, if you are not going to use this archetype, there are some challenges or some problems that the archetype addresses. Those are those questions. So how you will handle identifying of products? If you are going to use your own system, or maybe you are going to use some international standards, maybe EAN for products or ESBN for books, etc. How you will handle serial numbers, how they will be connected to the badges of products. And also searching. Well, we usually have Elasticsearch, and we know that the indexes in Elasticsearch sometimes are different than what we store in the database. The package specification, if you need to be prepared for that. And again, prices. How likely it is that pricing will be changed, or there will be some promotions. And again, in my repository, there is an example of product and product types. So if you want, you can check them out. And after trying to implement those in Rails, again, I think the most precious thing out of this archetype is this product type and product instance distinction. And the fact that you need to model your application to prepare for exact type of products that you want to sell. And also, this pleomorphism thingy, when you dig deeper into it, you can see that there is a specific version of an archetype for every type of products. Or you can use a general version that will work for all types, but is much more complex. And again, the fact that what you have in your warehouse might not be exactly what you have in your catalog. And pricing. So there is much more archetypes. I will just go quickly through them, but there is inventory archetype, which tells you how to handle availability of products. There is order, obvious one. There is even a rule archetype. If you see that you need to implement lots of rules and you have lots of logic, you can use this archetype, and it's really flexible. And even there is a CRM archetype. All right. So, to summarize, even if you are not going to use archetypes, the knowledge about them might be really beneficial for you. First, because they point you to the problems that you might encounter if you handle some types of challenges. Then, you still don't need to implement all of those. You can just use elements of them. You can just pick those things that will be usable in your system. Maybe just the fact that there might be separate roles, or how to connect responsibilities with roles. And also, be this is a good source of the inspiration. You will see how people are trying to solve some problems, and then you can be inspired and come up with your own solutions. Well, there are much more books about this topic. If you want, you can check them out. The idea is pretty the same. Sometimes the naming is different, like object models, archetypes. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michał. Any questions? Okay, we have a question.
Hi, a great presentation, I would say. My question would be, is there like another level of abstraction that helps you transition between the levels of an archetype, or gives you recipes like how to increase like the level of the relationships? So instead of just giving you the archetypes that you can have a party with a specific level, how to change your code or change your application from one level to like from the more abstract level to the more precise level. Like the steps to make a transition. It's not just the final recipe, but the steps to get there.
Yeah, I think you are saying about this in this recipe how to implement those archetypes. There was this step like translation or mapping. And to be honest, in this book, it just says that you should take those UML diagrams and see what you currently have and try to map it somehow. So maybe one class from UML diagram will result in 3 classes in your current system. But still you can treat those archetypes as the point where you want to end. And yeah, I think that's it.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you one more time. No?